Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight once again for Capstone Educational Consultants College Journey Conversations. We're so excited to have our special guest here tonight, Katie and David. Matt has been unable to join us at this time, but he may pop in here very soon. So I'd love to hear a little bit about Katie. David, if you don't mind introducing yourself and letting us know where you're from and all about what you do.
Great. Okay. My name is Katie Andersen. I am an IEC, Independent Educational Consultant, working in Dana Point, California. We are about halfway between Los Angeles and San Diego. I started my business around 2012. I did my college counseling certificate at UCLA. And I'm also a former Division I athlete. I grew up in Irvine, but I was recruited to play soccer at Duke University, and I was a member of their first women's soccer team. So a lot of the, when I started my practice, I decided to really focus very much on working with student athletes, and have today probably 50% of my students are student athletes and half of them are just regular students. But I like being able to combine both the educational the college application process side together with athletic recruiting. It has made a very good combination for me in my business.
Hi there. My name is David Stoeckel. I'm an independent educational consultant also based in Laguna Hills, California, about 10 miles away from where Katie lives. So we're both in that area between LA and San Diego. However, we do deal with athletes throughout California, throughout the country, and in some cases throughout the world. Basically, I focus strictly on the college-bound student athletes and going through the athletic recruiting process. I do not get involved so much in filling out applications or test prep or those type of things. Those are things that Katie does. So guiding the athletes through the recruiting process, I've done it for just about 30 years now, and it all started by accident. My two kids went through the recruiting process. My daughter's a volleyball player. My son was a swimmer, and we were very fortunate. They were pretty talented in their respective sports, so they got a lot of interest from the recruiting standpoint. My daughter ended up playing in the Pac-10 in Oregon State. My son was a swimmer at University of Virginia. So we had the West Coast and the East Coast sort of covered there. And the thing was that after they received their scholarship offers and went off to school, the parents at our local high school said, well, Dave, come back and explain to us parents and families, how do we get our kids recruited? And I thought for a moment, I said, I don't know. We were just darn lucky. And that's sort of what happened is, and as we go through this explanation, this presentation today, we'll go through the things that we've actually done or we've gained from our own experiences with our kids, et cetera. And so you'll see basically what the process is. So there was nothing, a big secret about it. Of course, until you know the secret, it is a secret. So anyway, that's sort of the way it worked. The other parents were saying, well, Dave, give this presentation to explain how the process works. I said, I don't know, but they kept harassing me. So I started contacting college coaches and saying, how's the process work? What can we do? What is it that you need? One of the big things they were asking for was videos, video footage of their kids. Because if we're on the West Coast, they're on the East Coast, they're in the Midwest, they're in Texas, things like that. The college coaches is very rarely are they going to be able to see with their own eyes the kids playing. So at that time, I did not own a video camera. I owned a regular little snapshot thing for pictures of the kids. So I wrote to college coaches asking them, what do you want to see in the video? Now I sent 100 college coaches a 4-page questionnaire saying, what do you want? Out of 100 that I sent out, we got responses from 60 of those coaches.
Oh, wow.
Saying, recruiting videos are so helpful. We know you're not a professional, but here's what we want to see. Here's the angle. Here's how wide the picture should start, et cetera, et cetera. I started doing those, and this is before every family had a video camera. and I started sending my videos back to the East Coast. And college coaches just jumped on those and said, wow, I've never seen this girl play in person, volleyball, whatever it was. Never seen her play in person, but I saw enough in your video footage that I'm going to give her a $100,000 scholarship. So I thought from the family standpoint, that's a good return on investment.
Yeah.
So it basically just went from where I was a volunteer service for families to where I was doing it part-time and then a little bit more part-time. And then lo and behold, for 15, 20 years, been doing it full-time. I should be retired and beyond by now, but I enjoy it. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy helping out the families. And so that's why we're still here.
Well, that's awesome. And I want to circle back around to that, David. I want to talk a little bit about the video aspect of the college student athlete process, because I think that's very valuable. Now, the three of us, we know each other from what, 2-3 years ago, I think.
Sure.
You know, someone might ask the question, well, you guys are California and I'm in Georgia. How does that happen? And we've had the privilege of studying and learning side by side at a number of conferences. We're all three of us members of the Independent Educational Consultants Association. And so because of that resource and that network, we've kind of come together and you've actually taught me quite a few things because you offer a certification course for independent educational consultants like myself to learn more about how to help, because quite frankly, you guys can't do it all as much as you would love to, right? You would love to be able to serve all student athletes, but you've trained other IECs like myself, correct? I mean, how has that worked for you?
Really well. And one of the things that put in there just to allow your listeners and your families there to understand the magnitude of this. Yes, we put together a webinar series for counselors such as you, Mark, and you attended. You were one of our star students, if I might say, as far as actually being involved and wanting to learn, et cetera. So yes, we have counselors from all over the country being involved in that. But it's a matter of following up afterwards. And we keep trying to tell counselors and tell families when we give presentations to high schools or to club teams, is that any of you college counselors out there that want to build your practice or want to get more clients, consider counseling college-bound student athletes.
Yeah.
Be more specific, all of you folks out there that are parents and have student athletes, bear in mind the fact that there are over 8 million participants in high school sports every year. And so we say to you, Mark, and other counselors that have gone through the course, how many counselors do you know that can guide athletes through the recruiting process the way you're able to do now and what Katie and I do?
Yeah.
So it's a huge number. There's a huge demand there. And it's a matter of explaining and sharing with your families what exactly it is that we do and what we're going to be discussing here this evening. I think we'll give them a better idea of the kind of services that you can provide for them. If you need backup, we're here to help you however we can.
Yeah, thanks for that. And let's, while we're not too far away from the video aspect of the student athlete, David, I'd love to kind of pick your brain a little bit, because it's a question I get a lot as to what that video is supposed to look like and what are coaches actually looking for in a particular video. And I've actually heard, and I think maybe it might be from you and Katie, is even during this downtime, so to speak, when students are at home, developing or filming some skills video might be a good idea, since many of the rehearsal, the practices and the actual games have been canceled. So the availability of that footage may not be as possible. So to create some new stuff in your own backyard, showcasing some of your actual athletic skill might be a good idea. Can you speak on that just for a second, Dave?
Yeah. Actually, we could probably take up this whole next hour.
Oh,
just
well, let's
talking
not do
about the
that. I've got
topic.
many more questions for you. So let's.
Yeah, let me just sort of quickly recap that because, as you know, in our presentation, when we talked to counselors and talked to families about the video, and of course now every family that has kids at one point they bought a video camera. I got a video camera. I'll go out and shoot that. But the thing is, there's more involved than just I'm going to go out there and shoot that in the backyard or the park or whatever it may be, because the footage that you're going to get and what your goals are different for football versus basketball versus soccer versus track, etc. And then even further, like say you take baseball. Well, what you videotape for the baseball pitcher is different than what you do for the third baseman or the center fielder. And so really it's like almost impossible to describe. I can take the one sport, say, for example, baseball. We've done a couple of those lately. And so there are different components to it. Number one, obviously on the top screen, just the titles. Here's my name, what my class is, my grades, etc. Just so that at a quick glance, a coach can see you got good grades for my school. You got the height and weight we need, etc. Okay, then sometimes you may do a personal introduction that may take you an hour to shoot, but it's only going to be like 60 seconds or a minute and a half long. Then the critical things is for most sports, the colleges want to see gameplay. And so this is where it gets a little tricky. So whether you're doing football where you're going to have the camera up in the bleachers and you're going to be like what seems like a mile away from the guys on the team. And so the tendency is that when you get these commercial companies doing these videos, they'll open the camera like to cover 2/3 of the screen. The problem here is the college coach watching that video can't find the kid that they're supposed to be recruiting because they're just fuzzy little dots there. So they got to go in tighter. So there's a lot involved, and we might, if you would like, down the road a little bit, is just give a presentation on video and pick a couple sports and show exactly how we do it. But for right now, if we have a kid in Georgia or a kid in Texas or a kid in New Jersey, is we say, okay, this is your sport, this is your position. I'm gonna give you a review ahead of time of here's where to stand, here's how wide the picture, here's when you turn the camera on and off, etc. Now you go home and shoot this, send it to me, and then I'll critique it. And usually with that two-step approach, virtually any position in any sport, we can show you where to stand, how tight, on and off, all those kind of things, where the athlete, the parents, the father, a lot of times, a sibling, a lot of times, a friend or neighbor that has a hobby of liking to shoot videos, we can get over that hurdle. But especially right now, because you look at NCAA Division I programs, Division II programs, that the college coaches, it's a dead period for Division I, a quiet period for Division II, which means the coaches may not have face-to-face contact with the athlete or the parents. For right now, it's up to when? What's the date right now, Katie?
It just changed for Division I to July 31st. It just got extended today. So we weren't able to find, as of yesterday, Division II was up till June 30th. I wasn't able to verify if that date had changed as well. But yeah, I mean, these things are changing every week that we do one of these. The dates keep changing. And so the best we can really say is make sure you're looking at ncaa.org in their media center. They have a COVID-19 page, and all of the latest news articles are coming out there. That's the easiest place to get it right from the source.
And so what that does is it makes the production of your own video that much more crucial, because as you made reference to earlier, the tournaments that they would have Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, all of those, even whether they're local, regional, or national, they've all been canceled.
Right.
And so and the college coaches can't meet face to face with the kids or the parents. So they're basically sitting in their office just like we all are right now. And the college coaches are just hoping and praying that kids will write to them, email, because the coaches right now can't have a face-to-face meeting like if it was Katie and myself,
right,
but they can email, what do they call it? The electronic communications. Mm-hmm. They can do those and talk with the coaches.
Yeah. And I will also, just to add to that briefly, we've talked to a number of college coaches who have all said, it's still at this point in the end of May, in the grand scheme of this COVID-19 situation, that they would still prefer to see game tape than just make your own in your backyard. But if you really don't have any game tape from the last year, then you're in a position where something is better than nothing. So, taping something, drills or whatever you can put together at a field, a local field, or, again, depending on the sport, depending on the circumstances, you do what you can. And if you really don't have any tape at all, then don't hesitate to contact coaches and tell them what you can about yourself. Let them know what you've been doing to train during this period of time. Most of the kids I know who are members of club teams or high school teams, their coaches have all given them workout plans and videos and things to be doing. And some are doing more than others. We actually just came out with a really great document that we produced yesterday that is a whole list of suggestions for, I've got kids in club programs where they're doing something 3 days a week, every week, very consistently, really bonding their team during this time. And then I've got other students of mine who are doing absolutely nothing. And maybe their club programs even shut down temporarily. So we're trying to help kids feel like there is still opportunity here and you can take advantage of it if you're willing to work hard.
Yeah, that leads me to a question for you, Katie. Given this COVID-19 time, coaches have been home just like everybody else.
Right.
They haven't had the face-to-face with athletes, both current and prospective.
Correct.
And their only resource of communication, I would imagine, would be either their cell phone and or their email box.
Right.
And so what would you say to the younger student athlete who is just beginning to find interest in, say, 10 or 20 different athletic programs, at 10 or 20 different colleges? How would you encourage them to take that first step, given the fact that the dynamic on the other side of the communication board is so different?
Right. So part of that question, it depends on what we're talking about when we're saying younger, because the NCAA recruiting rules are still in place when it comes to the age and where you are in this process. We, in very general terms, and again, we're talking across NCAA Division I, II, and III, and NAIA. We really like kids to get started in this process, and by getting started, it's the contacting a college counselor or contacting somebody who specializes in athletic recruiting. You certainly can do this yourself. You don't have to do that, but that's what we do. So we having someone helping to advise you, even on a very limited basis, I believe at this time is worth it. So starting that process in the middle of your sophomore year, of the student's sophomore year, gives you time. What you're doing is buying yourself time. If you get started in this process too late, you can still do it. It's not an impossible task, but it's much harder when you don't have the right time. So by getting started, the general steps that we would encourage kids to do is to sit down and evaluate what are their priorities. And this would be true for if it was COVID-19 quarantine or not, but really talking about, sitting down and understanding your priorities. What are those athletically? What are your goals? What are your reasons for wanting to play sports in college? But also talking through all the academic stuff as well, like, the size of the school and how that impacts your education, the location of the kind of programs you're looking at. Athletically, how hard, how good of a program do you think that you can, approach, right? And then making sure that you develop a student athlete profile, which is, one-page resume that summarizes your athletic and academic achievements. Starting to make that list of schools that are, and then, realizing that list could change dramatically as you go through this process. Right. One thing that's happened with COVID-19, when, directly to your question about if you're young and you have the time to start investigating these schools. Well, something that's happened just in the past couple of months that wasn't true 4 months ago was that colleges have done a much better job of putting all of their admissions meetings online. So you can do tours and you can do virtual admissions meetings on Zoom as a high school student. Whether you are a freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior, you just sign up on their website, and it is an awesome way to do research on these colleges. More from an academic perspective than an athletic perspective, but I think it really gives you a sense of what the school's all about and a chance to ask questions, at least on the academic side. So, getting started in that process in the middle of your sophomore year, we still feel is important. And until we're told otherwise, this is how I'm approaching things with all of my students. I mean, we realize that getting into other issues here, we recognize that every school out there is struggling to figure out how they're going to keep their doors open, how they're going to continue to accept students back on campus, what that's going to look like financially because of basketball and football. I mean, right now, because of basketball, because March Madness was canceled, many schools did not get the distribution of funds that they would normally receive this time of year to make sure that things can continue moving forward. And now that we're getting into a phase where who knows what football might look like in the fall, that could also, those two sports generate the majority of money that helps to fund all the other sports at a college. Right. So those issues are huge, and every college coach out there right now is trying to figure out, what they can do, making multiple. I'm sure if you've listened to any of their presentations, they've all got plan A, B, and C, and a lot of it is date based. It's kind of, well, let's see where we are on June 1st, and then let's see where we are on July 1st, and not trying to delay making those decisions as much as possible, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. There's a resource that you're very familiar with, hoopdirt.com. You're probably familiar with that resource, but they just announced as of today with a new update of several NCAA D1 schools that are actually eliminating some of their sports programs. Mm-hmm. I think of those near us here in Georgia, Appalachian State University in North Carolina. Their men's soccer, men's tennis, men's indoor track and field, they're eliminating. And so we're seeing, even Furman, for instance, is eliminating their baseball and men's lacrosse program. Yeah. Even D2 schools like Alabama and Huntsville, where Capstone Educational Consultants also has an office, right? But they're eliminating their hockey program. Florida Tech is eliminating their football program, of all things. So we're seeing quite a few. Rollins College out of Florida, private school, is eliminating their men's and women's cross country program. So we're seeing a lot of programs and actual sports being just like kicked to the curb, so to speak. But I suspect it's because of finances, and they're having to manage kind of where the next steps are financially for the institution, and so unfortunately some of the athletic programs take a beating.
Yeah, and I'm also sure that when you look at, if you look at a conference, for example, as a whole, if all of those coaches are trying to figure out, looking at their minimum, what they could do if they could, if they can't open their doors, if they can't get kids back to playing sports and being on campus, what is it that allows them to be able to compete, right? If they don't have competition, if they don't have someone to play against, it makes it pretty tough. So I think that part of that is a realignment of what they could do at a very minimum to kind of keep everything going. And, my hope, I'm an optimist, so I'm very, very hopeful that this is not a permanent state of being, that we're going to, find our way through this and hopefully make choices that don't just completely shatter the entire system, but actually allow for things to kind of go, maybe limp along for a while, but hopefully continue to exist so that when we when the day comes when we can all kind of get back to our normal lives as we knew it, hopefully that day will come, that, things could be reinitiated, things, but who knows? We really, it's hard to know what that will look like. So for now, just, cross fingers.
Right, right. Now, you mentioned earlier a little bit about the eligibility center and the changes that NCAA are actually making, and some of them are happening on the, every day there's something different that's taking place. But more recently, there's one that's been noted in the Eligibility Center COVID-19 response FAQs. They've actually highlighted it, and it basically says that the student should continue to work toward meeting legislated D1 or D2 initial eligibility requirements and submit all transcripts, test scores, and proof of graduation in the Eligibility Center. My point here in bringing that up is reference to the test scores. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on that because, Capstone Educational Consultants, we also do test prep. And I know, David, you referenced the fact that you stay away from that with a 10-foot pole, and I don't blame you, right? For your sake, because you've got your plate is full. And, we've had, and as you know, many testing sites closing, tests being canceled, the opportunity to take the ACT or the SAT on a timeline that makes sense for a student athlete has been, for lack of the better term, disrupted, right?
Right.
And so because NCAA is actually advising that those scores still need to be submitted, what's your counsel on something like that? How should the student athlete proceed? Now, maybe this is a big question with no definitive answer, but definitely some counsel in time, because it could change tomorrow. We recognize that, right, Katie? So
Absolutely.
all of this could change tomorrow, but for now, what's a student to do? What's a student athlete to do in this situation?
Right. So I'll just tell you what I tell all my students, especially my rising seniors right now. And one is my son. So you better listen. So I have been telling them all that we, until we are absolutely 100% positive that those scores are not needed, I am telling them, hey, most of my students, I don't think I have any that haven't at least taken the test once, but in every single one of those cases, it was someone who took it under normal circumstances in a classroom, right? So I would say that if you can, go ahead and register for one more attempt, the SAT or the ACT, you don't need to do both, but we still don't know. Colleges are coming out with statements again on a daily basis right now. It seems like this is probably because it's the end of the school year. They're finally coming around to making some final decisions about being, still requiring test scores or being test optional or being test blind. Just because, as you stated, the NCAA Eligibility Center is a different process from what a college would expect. So even if a college is, like a Cal State school is test blind, they don't even want to see your test scores next fall. The Eligibility Center, if they're still going to require them, are going to say, we need test scores. So go ahead and register. Personally, I think that it is going to be very difficult to compare tests that were taken at home online with all the challenges that the AP testing has had just recently in the last 2 weeks. I think this is going to be a really, really tough thing. So I wouldn't put it past the NCAA to make some more adjustments to this before it becomes a real solid thing. I think that there's a lot of reflection that needs to happen after the last 2 weeks of AP testing, especially after I started getting panic phone calls from parents. My son can't upload their calc, the pictures of their work. What do we do? And now kids are going to have to go back and retake tests. I realized that the College Board was put in a very difficult situation and that they had to come up with something to be able to do AP testing. But that's a separate issue. I just think that the issue of online testing, which is basically what we're hearing, will most likely be the answer in the fall, whether it's SAT or ACT. I just think that for now, go ahead, get registered for the test, and let's hope for the best. And you also never know how, if you can get a good score, you don't know how that might pay off in terms of maybe potential scholarship money, if there's something on the table there. Again, I think that things are too much in flux right now to say with any clarity.
Yeah. And I think one of the lessons learned in this for students, if the younger ones can learn anything from it, is not to procrastinate and not to wait to the last minute, because you never know what might happen, right? Where we always say, oh, I've got one more, we can take it next time, and then next time never shows up. So so I think that's a good lesson for all of the student athletes, is not to procrastinate the things that need to get done in the process. Agreed?
Yes,
Right.
Absolutely.
Speaking of process, the student athlete process to college is so different than a non-athlete student athlete to college. What do you say to a student or a family who's kind of looking at that and trying to manage both of those type of timelines at the same time?
Yeah, that's something where it's important, I think, for families, parents, and the athletes to sit down with someone like you or like ourselves here, who have the experience and the knowledge of what the recruiting process involves. And when we say starting the process midway through the sophomore year, January or February, particularly if your student athletes are high academic, they're looking at the schools that are high academic, whether they're Ivy League or an SCAC or whoever it may be, because of the fact that the process they go through, it's not like the regular student where, okay, I'm going to take these tests, SAT, ACT, take these tests, etc. I'm going to go drive with my parents and visit some colleges and, meet at the library, walk around, end up at the bookstore, buy a sweatshirt and go home. And that's how I'm going to decide where I'm going to have my college education. With student athletes, it is so critical that they go through the right process. So if they can start January, February of the sophomore year, get their introductory letters out to coaches, tell coaches when they're going to be in tournaments, send them video footage so that the college coaches can see what the numbers are, see what stats are, see some video footage, and or see a tournament, some actual live tournament play, so that the coaches, hey, this young man or this young lady, they are serious prospective recruits for me. Right. So that's sort of the first hurdle that you have. And it takes time to do that. It takes time to go through those processes. The coaches are not sitting there in their office just waiting for you to send the profile and the cover letter, et cetera. And then, oh, by the way, you have a tournament 2 weeks later, I'm going to get on a plane and fly there. It doesn't happen like that. Right. So with the regular students, it's just, okay, plan when you're going to visit some colleges, make a reservation to go on a tour, hear the prepared spiels, et cetera. With the student athlete, it's going through letting the coaches know they exist, so the coach can say, okay, I have opening or I have needs in a certain position. Academically, my college needs for student athletes to have certain minimum grade levels. And then I've seen video footage or seen the athlete play in person. And I, as the college coach, have talked with his high school coach, club team coach, private trainer, if they have them. Those are things that the student athletes, it's not part of their script. But for the student athletes, it's really important to them that they get a chance to talk to the coaches, because they can see on the profile, here's height, weight, here's grade scores, strength, et cetera, like that. But they want to find out from the coach, the club team coach and the high school coaches, is this kid coachable? Does he have a good work ethic? Is he a team player? Does he get to practice on time? Those kind of things that are just like subjective attributes, you can't measure them, But that's why they want to talk to the high school and club team coaches to find out, is this a kid that's going to fit in with the chemistry of my players? And then eventually the kid does the unofficial visit with their parents, see the campus, meet the coaches, see the athletic facilities. And then if all goes well, the college coach invites them on an official visit,
Right.
which Division I, it's basically all expenses paid for a 48-hour visit to the campus. The school can pay for the transportation to the campus, pay for the meals, pay for the housing. When college coaches make that kind of an invitation, that means they're serious about the kid. They're spending money. They're devoting their time to try to do the sales pitch of that particular athlete. So if they have to go through all those steps and they're high academic, what's going to happen more often than not is the coach will say, okay, how do you like University of so-and-so? We like you. We think you'd be a good addition to our team. We want to make an offer, scholarship, whatever, to you. But it's the college coaches, even if, let's say, if they're looking at Ivy Leagues, and I use this example so families can see the importance of this. So if the athlete's looking at Ivy Leagues, like at Harvard, we say, okay, there were 34,000 applications to Harvard last year. They accepted 2,700 of them, like 5 or 6%. And there are kids that are applying there that have done miraculous things and had all kinds of challenging situations. How is our kid going to be one of the 2,500 out of 30,000 that gets an invitation to go to that school? Right. Well, that's one of the things about being a student athlete is the coach says, okay, you got the baseline scores and test scores and grades that we need for a student athlete here at Harvard, Princeton, Yale, wherever it may be. And so, but we want you to apply for admissions early decision, which means they have to get their application in by
November 1 usually.
November 1. And the admissions office is going to review that. They know the coach says, hey, I want to use a free ticket on this kid to come to my school. And so the admissions office knows that. They really also know what the transcripts and test scores, et cetera, are like. And so a lot of times, nothing guaranteed, but just going on my experience over just the past 30 years, when that's an athlete going through that process, they've visited several campuses, of course, and then they're going to apply early decision. They're only going to apply to one college. And if they get in, they're going to have to go to that college. So now if the coach at Harvard says, we want you to come visit this particular weekend here, the student athlete has to be prepared to make that decision. Say, yes, coach at Harvard, I'll come to your school if I get accepted. I'm coming to come on the official visit there. And so it's a tighter timeline for the student athletes as opposed to just the students who have more time. They don't have to worry about applications in October or making those kind of decisions that early. And that's what's so frustrating when we have athletes who are in their junior year just coming to us, and they're great students and great athletes, but it's August, September, October, of their senior year. And especially if it's right now with everything else is going on, forget it. It's a disaster waiting to happen.
It's going to be really impossible.
Okay.
Yeah, the timing is everything. And I guess I'll add to that. And I think that Dave's example of a high academic student, and especially that combined with a school that does have early decision as an option, because not all schools do, but when you're a high academic athlete, over a 4.0, the test scores to match, and you're looking at schools that do have, whether it's a D1 or a D3 school that has that early decision option, hopefully you've had the chance to get out and visit that school and know that that is the decision that you want to make. Because if in the summer before your senior year, that coach says to you, hey, we'd love to have you on the team. Are you ready to apply ED? And you go, not really sure.
Right.
You just lost your place on the team.
Right. Yeah.
So that one's pretty critical. And I will also just add that the process of a coach asking for transcripts and test scores early, meaning like end of junior year, just like right as school ends or beginning of senior year, so that they can do a pre-read on your test scores and transcripts. That's a pretty important step in the process. It doesn't guarantee you anything, but it means that they're walking your stuff into admissions, and they usually have a liaison in the admissions department. And now with everything that has just happened with the scandal, I feel like, Varsity Blues, that was like ages ago. Even though new news has come out, but truly, colleges today, because of that, if any of their processes in compliance or recruiting were in the least bit lax, I promise you they aren't today. That has a major impact on the way that athletic recruiting is done.
Absolutely. How many colleges or athletic programs, I guess one and the same, how many do you on average typically see on a student athlete's list moving forward? Because I think our viewers might be a little surprised at this number, and I'm all about the shock factor, and this is one that, like, for student athletes especially, shocked me at the very beginning. So
have you gotten over the shock yet?
I'm still not over the shock. So share with our viewers how many on average you typically see on these lists starting out.
It does vary somewhat, but again, we like to think of an ideal situation where they are starting the process January, February, the sophomore year, and they can take a little breather every once in a while and come up for air. They are not the ones, and unfortunately, at least for me, and I think for Katie, we get more inquiries, July, August, September before the senior year, and they're high academic. Well, it's slim pickings, but let's just say it's the ideal situation where they are coming in middle of the sophomore year. They have a chance to visit some schools, do homework on them, see them play. Because your student athletes, we want them to do the same thing that the coach is himself or herself is doing. And that is, look at the numbers academically, look at the numbers athletically, height, weight, speed, et cetera, things like that. And be able to go through those things. But if we get kids on time, and I think in a way for both of us is, if the family is full of dreamers, it's a father of a football player who says, my kid's going to be here and going to be on this big TV screen here in a couple of years. I'm going to invite everybody over for the parties, et cetera. If we sense there's a sort of unrealistic expectations, and that's one of the things where we have problems with kids. Number one, they come in late, they have crummy grades, and they aren't that good on the the field of play. But generally, if we can be more optimistic and say, okay, they are conscientious, they're starting on time, et cetera. But generally, because of their major, because of their grades, because of their athletic ability, strength, et cetera, there's going to be some challenges in there. And the fact is, we don't have statistical proof of this, but just from our experience over many years, is basically when we send out introductory letters to coaches, we expect to hear back from maybe 10 or 15%. Therefore, we are selecting target schools of 50 to 55 to 60 plus colleges, which includes dream schools, fallback schools, and what we think is realistic. But until we hear the feedback from the coach is going to tell us, and it's not your high school coach and it's not the dad. It's going to be the college coaches or assistant coaches that are going to tell us that's realistic, a realistic expectation there, go for it. And then of course, we want the families to be able to see on video, on TV, or in person, those teams compete, or at least practice a workout, that kind of thing. So the numbers are big because we'll send them to 50, 60 colleges, and it's a form intro letter. So it's not a lot of time, really zeroing in on one specific kid in the narrative. But basically, getting responses from 10, 12, 15 is a good start. Now, if we can just get those coaches to see video footage, watch us play at a tournament, et cetera, something like that, and be able to give a honest evaluation of do we have the athletic competence to play in your team and contribute to the future success of your program? And if we can get 2 or 3 or 4 coaches to say, hey, I'm keeping you on my list of prospective recruits, which I have 1 opening for tight end, and my list is down to 12 to 15 players.
Right.
And I'll make an offer to several of them, but only one's going to get that position. And so from the college coach standpoint, particularly now, because of all the limitations on their ability to see coach or see the kids play, et cetera, it's even tougher for both sides of the transaction.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the funnel. It's you
Right. Yeah.
got to start that funnel large and cast that net pretty wide. And,
right.
The skill set, the academics, all of that's going to allow you to make it through that funnel. But we're also talking about good fit, right? So there's good fit athletically, but there's got to be a good fit academically too, and socially, and on other different levels. And so once you filter all that down through the funnel, clearly you're going to be set, with fewer schools than you started with. But unfortunately, the numbers you start with are so much larger than a non-student athlete typical number set. So that's my point in that. And for our viewers' sake, just to realize that, it seems like you can pick the number of schools in 2 handfuls that you might be notably interested in playing sports for, but recognizably they might not be as doable as you might want them to be. So you've got to kind of cast that net a little deeper.
Yeah. Well, along that thought process there, you hit the nail on the head as far as, okay, athletically, academically, whatever our financial contribution, we can work all those things out. But it's really a matter, is it a good fit for me? Because with the athletes, when they go there their freshman year, okay, the admissions people puts everybody in the dorms there, and generally in the athletic teams, everybody in the soccer team, they're staying together, the football team staying together, et cetera. The thing is, the challenge that kids have is that, okay, they get through the freshman or the first half of the freshman year or the whole year, and they're settling in. They like the coach, but some of their teammates they really don't get along with very well, and so they talk to them when they're in competition, but other than that, they stay away from them. And so these athletes have to realize when they go on visits, and as you know, Mark, that we have several pages of questions to ask, things to see when you're on campus on an unofficial visit with your parents. And when you go on an official visit, you meet with the coach, you see the athletic facilities, you see the dorms where you're going to stay, but your teammates are going to be your roommates, your teammates, your classmates for 4 years, whether you like them or not.
Right.
So it's real, and keeping in mind when they invite you on an official visit, they're picking up the tab that everybody, coaches, assistant coaches, players, the biggest jerk on the team, they're all so polite to you, and they're all bowing down to you, and we can't wait till you're here next year. And some of the stories we've heard from the guys and girls that have gone on these visits, everybody is so nice, and so on and so forth. So finding that perfect fit athletically, academically, because that's preparing them for their career, as well as the compatibility with teammates, and it might be athletes in other sports or just other students that they met along the way. So when they make that commitment, it's on a lot of different fronts that they have to consider.
Right. And I'll just add that, I think as we've, as Dave has talked about this, the initial, back to your initial question about how many schools should you start with, many families, especially if they're trying to do this by themselves, don't be afraid to realize that the beginning of this process is very data driven. It's very numbers driven. It's looking at the odds of, okay, we know what your GPA is. We know what your test scores look like. And let's look at the acceptance rates and the GPA ranges and the test score ranges for these schools. And then let's also look at where are they ranked for that the women's soccer program or the whatever, right? You look at that ranking and you say, okay, based on these numbers, if we had to pick 70 schools, 60 schools that may be a possibility, knowing that some of them are reach and some of them are going to be right smack in the middle of target schools, and some of them might be I will be the best player they've ever seen. That's okay. That's a starting point, and you will revise that list as you go. And as you hear back from coaches who are showing genuine interest and not just, hey, come to my camp
Right,
in a
yeah.
year when they are offering a camp, because this year
Yeah.
probably not so much. But the difference between I want to get on a call with you because you're the exact kind of player I need, and thanks so much for contacting us. Here's our profile form for you to fill out, and we'd love to see you at our camp. Those are wildly different responses from college coaches. So you need to be able to distinguish between the two of those, and then figure out which ones are the ones where you're getting the most interest, and then go revisit that list and dig in deep and figure out where you can find more schools that look like that. Because of all the soft side of things that Dave was just talking about, the visits, do you get along with the team? Do you like the coach? All the stuff that isn't numbers based, right? That's all very just experience, your experience with that. They might not work out the way you thought they would. I have had kids go on official visits at schools that they were so prepared to fall in love with, and they got there and they're like, I love the school. I hate the coach. I hated the kids on the team. I do not see myself playing here. Or I got there and realized I didn't even know that their practice field is an hour away from campus.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're going to spend 2 hours a day commuting back and forth just to have practice. So, when you have those things, until that happens, that's very far down the road. So don't be intimidated by that initial list being so large, because like you said, there's a reason for it, and it's a funnel. And if you do it right, you will end up in hopefully a good place. That's the goal.
Yeah. And I brought the dramatic point up, obviously, because I think there's more perspective out there from parents to say the numbers on a college list are fewer than one might expect for student athletes. And so I wanted our viewers to be able to hear the truth of the matter when it comes to creating a college list for the student athlete. I think that's a significant difference between a student athlete and a non-student athlete in the process. And I thought that was very, very important to bring up.
Yeah. And also remember, you're not putting in applications at all these schools. This is not what we're talking. The reason you put so many schools on that list is not because you're putting applications everywhere. That is way further down the list. And hopefully, because I do both the academic and athletic advising, there's oftentimes a backup strategy, which is, do I have a couple of schools on my list where I could be a walk-on? If this does not work, at the end of the day, if I go on my official visits and I am not the one given the final offer, because that has happened to my kids before too, what am I going to do? Where else can I apply where I would be a legitimate walk-on candidate and have a reasonable chance of being able to compete for that program? But I get in as a regular student and I don't have the coach's help, and I do this the back door way.
Right, yeah.
And that also has to be a strategy that is always have a plan B and even have a plan C.
Yeah, and that's proof to the pudding, so to speak, that there's multiple paths to play.
Right.
Exactly, yeah.
We always want to go through the front door. We've seen what happens.
Everybody loves going through the front door.
Yeah. We choose alternative methods, which are unethical. But it's really important to know that students have multiple paths to play, and not only paths, but divisions, right? Because you may think, at least for yourself, man, we could go on for another hour about this, couldn't we?
Yes.
Right, yeah.
The student can have all the ability in the world to play the sport and love the sport with all their heart, but they may not be D1 level quality play or skill play. And therefore, they're looking at more a lower level type playing ability. There's also the D2, as you are very well aware, and there are many schools out there that offer scholarships and have great competition. So they're very competitive. And then, of course, we have the D3 level, which is as well very competitive, but they don't offer scholarships. But oftentimes they might offer more academic level scholarships, and that's excellent to consider. So, and then of course, as we've mentioned just recently, if they can't get into any of those three, there's of course NAIA for unique schools as well, and then there's always the walk-on opportunity, for the student who said, man, I wish I would have known this a year ago or 2 years ago to get started, and now I'm late to the game, and so to speak. That's no pun intended for the topic.
Yeah.
But the late to the game, and they suddenly realize they love the coach, they love the players, they love the school, they're sitting on campus, they want to get involved, and coach says, we've got a spot, would you like? And they said, oh my gosh, a dream has come true, and they walk on, right? They can't always count on that, but it's definitely an opportunity that exists. And
right.
Yeah, one thing along that line, you're absolutely right, is and look at the different alternatives that are available. But even when you get down to that walk-on situation, you can be an invited walk-on or an uninvited walk-on. So if there's issues regarding admissions and meeting the criteria that admissions needs, if they're talking to us or they're talking to you, Mark, and the admissions person and saying, well, the coach really wants this kid, they're at just right at the borderline of the bottom where we can accept or not accept, but the coach classifies him or her as an invited walk-on. So they're going to give a little bit extra support. And as you know, obviously the college or the athletes at colleges that are on these teams, they're going to get access to advisors who just specialize in the athletes. So when you're in season, you're going to have a lighter course load than when you're on off season. Maybe you should come to summer school for a while, those kind of things. They're going to have mandatory study hall that they have to go to. Some coaches, particularly the high academic places, if athletes start slipping and the coaches are getting updates maybe on a weekly basis of the kids that are having problems. So the coach wants to be able to come to a quick decision that, hey, you're not spending enough time studying, you don't comprehend the material in your courses, whatever it is, we're going to go, me, the head coach, you, the athlete, we're going to go visit your instructors and have a face-to-face meeting with them to find out what's the problem. We want to get you back on track,
right?
Type of thing. So there are like sub levels of getting accepted or admitted to those schools. And it's, again, I just go back because it's so very important on all these things we've just been talking about, of making sure that your athletes, when they're going on these visits, have you shared with them questions to ask, things to see, who to talk to, etc. Even like I say, okay, official visit, you're gonna have to make a decision here. So when you go on that official visit for 48 hours, we want you to talk to juniors and seniors that have been there for 3 years about what this team is really like, what the coach is really like. And then we want you to talk to some freshmen that have only been here 2 months and see what their attitudes are. It's going to be different than on those official visits sometimes. So all things to consider there.
Absolutely, man. I really mean it when I say we could probably go another hour, but we can't. And I'm really sad. We have come to the end of our time, and want to definitely thank you, Katie. Thank you, David. But I also want to reach out to our viewers right now and give a little shout out to some of our friends that are watching. And I want to say thank you, Tina, for spending some time with us this evening. And thank you, David, for watching. Not the David that's talking, but the David that's watching. And also, Anne, thank you. And we're glad to provide the information for you. And I'm glad you've seen and thought that it's so helpful. We're so appreciative of your time with us this evening. Katie, David, this has been a fantastic evening, and it has gone fast, I'll tell you that.
Right.
And I've got a host of questions still to ask, and we didn't get through all of our content, and that's okay, because we covered some things that we weren't expecting, and that I'm super excited. I definitely want to give you guys a chance to tell our viewers how, if they would like to get in touch with you, how they would go about doing that.
Okay, So because our audience here are family members and not so much on the counselor side, my personal website is www.collegefitoc.com. That's probably the easiest way to go. And my email is listed there on my website.
Excellent. Thanks, Katie.
And my email address, david@playcollegesports.com. Telephone number is 949-306-3310. If people would like to call, I'll be happy to chat with them.
Super. Really excited that you guys could join us tonight. Bring your expertise with you and share with our viewers, and hopefully it'll stick around for a while and people can watch it over and over and over again if they choose to. We are super glad that you were able to join us. We're glad all of our viewers were able to join us as well. We hope you all have a great evening tonight, and we wish you all the well in the future, and see you next week for our next college journey conversation. Goodbye.
Thanks very much.